Hi, everybody. Welcome to our May Forgotten Grapes Wine Club virtual tasting. So excited to have you joining us tonight. Thank you so much. I am elated to have another one of our Forgotten Grapes revisits with Aaron Hunt of Shadow Run Wineries. We featured Shadow Run during 2021. I think you guys were like our sixth or seventh winery that we featured, which is pretty amazing. In fact, I was having to remember whether we actually did a virtual tasting with you back then or not, which I don't believe we did. And I know we weren't recording them because we didn't start recording them until 2022. So this is going to be a lot of fun because we'll be, not only catching up, but for a lot of you, it's going to be your first time interacting with Aaron and learning about Shadow Run and his wines. Before we begin, of course, just standard rules for us. We're going to mute everybody except for Aaron and I. So if you have any questions, throw those into the chat and we will answer them. I'll be monitoring those and we can answer those questions. Also, let us know what you're dining, what you're eating with the wines. Looks like Sandy and Larry have some really nice pizza tonight that they are enjoying. But let us know what food pairings you are pairing with or what food pairings you would like to pair with the Shadow Run wines. And our next offer for June should be coming in the next week or two. We're just getting that sorted out, but that should be coming probably sometime next week. So keep an eye out for that. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome my good friend Aaron Hunt from Shadow Run Wineries joining us here tonight. Aaron, how are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. So we always start our virtual tastings by asking you what is the best or most memorable bottle of wine that you have ever opened?
Okay, most memorable, like a single bottle.
I
Um,
mean, it could be multiple bottles. Like we're open. Did you open a
that
case at
would
the
be
same
less
time?
memorable.
Yeah.
No, I've got one in mind. This will sound self-serving, but it was a Shadow Run 2012 Petit Sirah.
Okay.
I think it was Thanksgiving, maybe 2014, and we'd only been making wine for a couple years, and we had all the family was in town. I was in town. Everyone was passed out by midnight, but there were like 15 bottles open, and I picked out a 2012 Petit Sirah that had been open for like maybe 6 hours, and sipped it and thought, "Holy smokes, she did it!" Like this is it's rich and extracted, but it's also, approachable and commercial and holy smokes. So that was a special bottle.
That was your revelatory. That was your when you were like, maybe we're on the right track here.
Yeah, we might make some good wine. That was my thought.
Nice. For those of you who are drinking along tonight at home with us, just so you know the order, we're going to start with the Moon Shadow Grenache Blanc. Then we'll be moving on to the Jolie Rosé of Petit Sirah. Then the Descent Malbec. Bum, 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 bum. And last but certainly not least is the Raven, which I believe is the only Shadowrun wine up until this point that I had not tried. So I was very, very excited to open that up. But before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned, she's done it. She meaning your mom, Susan, who
Yes.
now you guys are co-winemakers for the winery, but she it was kind of her passion at the beginning that started it. But take us back to the origin of Shadow Run. Like how did it start? Where were you guys before Paso Robles, and how did it come about that you decided, we're going to be a family that makes wine?
Sure. So I think it was 2005. My folks were living in Huntington Beach. I was living somewhere in Orange County, probably Irvine, working a corporate job. And they decided they were going to retire. They were going to sell their house, and they just wanted like a little house to keep their toothbrush at. And they'd always loved tasting in Paso Robles, so they thought, why not get a little place in Paso? And then like a couple weeks after that, it was, well, maybe we could get a property with some income, like some renters or, olive trees. And then a couple weeks after that, it was, we could get a property with a vineyard, it's Paso Robles. And then 2 weeks after that, they'd bought the biggest, most tore up cattle ranch on the edge of town. My mom was signing up to study viticulture at Cal Poly, and my dad was going back to consulting because it's all very expensive. And then for me, it was just like, hey, cool, I got a cool weekend job. I'll come up once or twice a month, and they'll they'll work me like a dog, and then we'll do some good wine tasting. And my dad's a civil engineer, so he had a lot of fun with like the managing the land and setting up the irrigation systems and all that. And my mom was a winemaker. He was kind of the ranch hand. His official title was cellar rat, and then later executive cellar rat. And they kind of started backing into retirement in like 2020. And I was on furlough from work during the pandemic, and after maybe like 3 months of cocktailing by the pool with neighbors for April through July or something, I thought maybe I should do something with myself. So I moved up to help out my folks and started taking over more and more of the business and the winemaking. And then this last year, 2 days into harvest, they decided to expedite their move to Pacific Grove. And with 1 day's notice, they told me, we're out. They said, we're moving to PG. And I said, well, I know. And they said, we're going to leave tomorrow. We're going to check into a hotel and find a place. We'll be back in a month for our plants. Good luck. So that's the whole arc.
Right. So now you are basically running things. What were Susan and Les, your parents, what were they doing? You mentioned Les was a civil engineer. But you know, what was it like that sort of spurred the winemaking? Was it the careers they were in beforehand, or was it just like they were looking at properties and kind of just everything escalated?
They were both in local government. Um, it seemed like things just escalated, but I think in retrospect, my mom wanted a vineyard and to be a winemaker, and it all just kind of happened. So that's my take on it now. And they, like I said, I think when they were real young, they tasted Napa. Then they decided they like Paso a lot more. They came up here tasting, I mean, at least a half dozen times a year. And so in my first experience wine tasting in my 20s was going with them. And they'll deny it now, but they tasted like champions. They would hit two wineries in the morning, glass of wine with lunch, a couple in the afternoon. We may or may not have ever gone to dinner. I couldn't tell you. So that was also my introduction to wine tasting. And yeah, they just got after it. They bought this property. They did almost all the work themselves. They had to institute a cocktail hour at 5 p.m. because otherwise they would just work till they were dead. They were obviously they had consultants for the vineyard and the tasting room and the barrel room, but they were just working 10-hour days, 7 days a week, year after year to get this place built. And it looks a lot different than it did when they bought it.
Yeah. And you said it's an old kind of, I guess it wasn't abandoned, but sort of a rundown cattle ranch. And
Yeah.
you guys are in the town of Creston. You're on La Panza Road. I always kind of jokingly refer to you as the southernmost Paso Robles winery, uh,
Right.
down in that direction. How did they find that property? Was that an area that they were looking at? Did they want that much land? Like
Um,
what
they
was
they
going through
almost
the
bought
minds?
a they almost bought a property like in the Adelaide district that had a beautiful home and had a perfect little uh 10-acre vineyard, but it was just kind of a simple like square property.
Mhm.
And Shadow Run, my mom liked the mystery, meaning it's 150 acres. There's a 300-foot ridge that runs through half of it. There's no place you can stand on the property where you can see all of it. There's a ravine that's got like a manzanita forest, and she just thought they both thought that was really cool. And curiously, I've been telling the story forever that Shadow Run was the name of the cattle ranch when they bought it. But now that they've left and I took over their house, I'm going to Airbnb the apartment above the barn I was living in. So I had to pull all the original permits. When they bought it, it was actually Running Shadows Ranch.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's because the previous owner, she would sit up in that apartment above the barn, and she could see shadows running up and down the long meadow, which is a little creepy when you live by yourself in the middle of nowhere. But anyway,
Maybe,
I think it's
maybe,
a cool name.
maybe the shadows were her friend. I mean, running shadows is cool. Shadow Run though is a very, very cool name as well.
Uh,
So was that something that was, I mean, do you think that was Les and Susan sort of interpreting running shadows into Shadow Run, or was it just the cattle ranch owners sort of, equated the two and Shadow Run was
mm.
the probably the shorter name they used? And
Back then they made a lot of decisions without consulting me. I have
mm,
to admit, I was
yeah, true.
250 miles away.
Fair.
So, and what's funny is I eventually convinced them to get all their documents onto a shared drive. And every once in a while, I'll get in there looking for something specific, like is there a diagram of water lines on this part of the ranch? Because I just broke a water line and I'd love to know how to turn it off or whatever. And I get in there and it is fascinating. There's 20 years of permits and maps and plans and yeah, a lot has happened here.
Yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, you're living in Orange County. You're working at that point in kind of cyber security sales.
Mhm.
Did you have any interest in getting into the wine business? Did you just sort of see this as your mom's folly? Obviously now you've sort of over the last 20, 21 years kind of taken on the fold and learned some things. But at the time, what were your thoughts when they announced that they were buying this property?
Well, I thought it was going to be really cool to have a ranch and someday a vineyard and winery to go hang out at on the weekends. Working with my dad, those are the best times we've ever spent together, even if they were 12-hour miserable days. Um, I just thought it was a neat thing, and I was happy to help. And it was, it was their dream. A lot of my friends were like surprised that our first bottle of wine tasted like wine, not like milk or orange. And it never even occurred to me that they wouldn't, succeed in making good wine. But then as I got, well, I guess when I moved up here in 2020, my dad was sick, and my mom was very stressed out about that. They're both fine now, but it's kind of a stressful time, and I was helping out, and then I got more engaged because just little annoyances, like we're running the business on paper, literally using a little sales book instead of software. So I said, we need to get this business on software. We need some automation, a point of sale. We need something to manage the wine club. And most of the work I did with them, I always felt like if working with either one of them, if they had kind of like silence and time, they rarely made a mistake. So my job was usually to like lean on a shovel and stare off into space and let them figure out what was going on. But over the course of the years, I started to develop my own opinions on how I thought, we should get stuff done. Um, and then at that point, well, I mean, it's just been such a big part of my life for so long
Hmm.
that when they said, "Hey, we're taking off. Are you hanging out?" Like that, like you don't say no to that, right? Like it's, I feel very compelled to, be here and work on the place and make wine and tend the vineyard and all that stuff.
Yeah. So when you first bought the property, we're going to start planning it, and at that point, your mom is taking the classes at Cal Poly. I know she also did a few harvests for some local winemakers. But
Mhm.
how did you guys decide what grapes to plant on the property? Where did I don't want to call it the business plan because a lot of times
Yeah.
these things don't get started with sort of a like, okay, we're going to make 9 SKUs or 5 SKUs, and it's going to be these varietals and these blends, and we're going to sell at this price and whatnot. But um, what was the decision making process like in terms of what grapes to plant, what wines to make, and how to sort of get things up and running?
Sure. So well, first of all, they at first they thought they were just going to grow grapes, but then they
Mhm.
found out you can't make any money growing and selling grapes unless you have 50 acres or whatever it is.
Or a good
Uh,
PR team
or,
to
or,
really
or,
sell
yeah,
your vineyard as a premier crew type of vineyard.
right.
Yes.
Or a great network. So they decided they were, the only way to make money on with a smaller amount of grapes was to bottle and sell wine. They hired a consultant to evaluate the soil and recommend rootstock and recommend varietals. But what they got back was exactly what they were expecting and what they wanted to make. They wanted to grow Syrah. They wanted to grow Petit Syrah. They wanted to grow, Viognier, I think was their favorite white. Back in those days, I think half the glasses of white wine served in Paso were Viognier with a little bit of Roussanne, Marsanne. That was the mix. And they sourced Grenache, and we ended up planting some of that later, thinking we could make better juice cheaper by growing it ourselves. Malbec was kind of a dark horse because, I mean, it's hard to imagine a time where Malbec wasn't a thing, but like we didn't really know what Malbec was back in 2005.
Mhm.
Um, but I was dating a girl who actually she went to Argentina by herself and came back with a bunch of bottles of Malbec and gave them to my folks, and my folks liked it, and they thought, all right, cool, let's grow this Malbec stuff. And at the time, since it was kind of a fluke, they only planted half an acre. And they later found out it doesn't make sense to have a half acre of anything because no, because each varietal it gets ready on its own day. So you have to have a crew out for half an acre. It doesn't make sense. So then they planted more, but that worked out well because when they planted more, they picked a different strain, and kind of the combinations of the two strains of Malbec make for a better wine, as I hope everyone agrees with when they try the 22 Malbec.
Yes, well, we'll talk about the descent when we get there, but let's talk a little bit about the 25 Moon
Mm.
Shadow here. First of all, I have to say I absolutely love your silkscreen labels. I've always been a fan, and I know it's predominantly the whites you guys do the silk screening on, but this has always been one of my favorite labels. In fact, I think we did the like 22 or 23 Moonshadow when we featured you guys
Mm.
earlier. It might have been the 21, but it was one of the first vintages and you had the same label and it was just so beautiful. But this is a grape that you mentioned, you planted Viognier. That's always been kind of your staple white, but Grenache Blanc has kind of been the second white grape
Mm.
that you guys work with, and you do both the single varietal Viognier, single varietal Grenache Blanc, and then a blend of the two. So, at what point did you guys decide, Grenache Blanc was a way to go? And is there a reason why you haven't planted that on the property?
Um, yeah, so initially we planted Viognier,
Mhm.
and I think our first couple vintages were neat wines. I mean, they were really rich and powerful, but if it was a particularly big year, it was just too much. It was like, and I guess you could describe maybe like a Mai Tai that got left in the sun for a minute. Just way too much flavor.
I
So
mean, that's actually most Mai Tais, right? I mean, pretty
that
much
is
if you,
most, yeah, that's
yeah.
how they, yeah. So they thought, well, and they were right. Grenache Blanc is lighter, and it blends well with Viognier. It's also a Rhone varietal, so adding some of that would kind of tame it down. I would say though, since then, most of our vintages of Viognier, I mean, a lot of years, that's my favorite wine, the 100% Viognier. So we started sourcing Grenache Blanc to blend, but then we liked it so much, it tasted good in barrel or in tank, that we decided to make it its own label. And that's Moon Shadow, which I agree. I think that's the prettiest bottle we've ever produced. And my mom designed that, and I can't believe we're related because I am not creative. And yeah, she did that all on her own.
Nice. So the idea with the Grenache Blanc was to kind of bring a little more acidity to kind of, balance out the richness of the Viognier, it sounds like.
That's right. So Viognier, picking the right harvest date, you wait a minute too long and the acids have fallen off. And
Yeah.
obviously, acid makes the wine, what gives it structure, it makes it crisper, it makes it more thirst quenching. It's more versatile to pair with foods. I mean, it's all kinds of great stuff. And that was the purpose of the Grenache Blanc. Um, and those are still the whites. I mean, and when I made the whites this year, it didn't occur to me to do anything else. It did 100% Grenache Blanc, a Viognier, and then a blend of the two.
Nice. Where are you sourcing the Moonshadow Grenache Blanc from? Is it from vineyards close to your property? Are you kind of trying to stay in the same AVA area, or are you looking abroad for it?
Always as close to home as possible. Not because it's necessarily a superior Grenache Blanc. It just feels more authentic, you know. I think we kind of wish we were growing it, and maybe hopefully we'll plant some in the next few years. The current batch you're drinking right now, so a couple years ago, Grenache Blanc was impossible to get. Like it was
Mhm.
just everybody wanted it. I talked to a guy who just planted 10 acres, and his grapes were spoken for like 3 years out.
This is prior to 2023 because
This
I
would
I can speak to 2023 Grenache Blanc being readily available.
Yeah, so right, because you were buying.
Mhm.
I think this was in it might have been in 22 when I was trying to find one for 23.
Okay.
At that time, we ended up going with what are they? They're Fabulous now.
Oh, Sans Liege or whatever it is.
Yeah, I forget what the vineyard's called, but it used to be Pomar Junction. I think that was one of my favorite moon shadows we ever made. It worked out great. But then
Very cool.
But then I had an opportunity. So there's a guy named Randy who owns the largest vineyard consulting company in Central California. And
Mhm.
he and his wife planted their own personal little vineyard. And I want to say it's like 14 acres, 20 acres.
Okay.
Uh, and also a whole bunch of agave now. He's now like the fifth biggest producer of
Huh.
agave in California, which is kind of a cool side hustle.
Is planning for the future.
Yeah, but it was only the second year, but I figure if this guy runs a bunch of consultants who manage some of the best vineyards in Paso, his is going to be super dialed.
Right.
So I was actually either his first customer or one of his first customers. And I bought some from him. And even though that guy knows as much about managing a vineyard as anybody, the pick was a little light. We got less Grenache Blanc than we were hoping for.
Mhm.
So he pointed me towards Summerwood,
Mm.
which actually he just took over management of that vineyard this year. And so we also got some from Summerwood.
And Summerwood's right there in the Templeton Gap. So West
Yeah.
Side Grenache Blanc.
Yeah. And we've a little bit of a connection. When my folks first moved up here, my mom wanted to see how a tasting room was supposed to be run. So she went and got a job at Summerwood
Oh, funny.
behind the bar for, I don't know, it's like 6 months or a year, something
She
like
really
that.
she did kind of everything. She she
Yeah.
she tested everything out, did every aspect of the wine business.
They were fired up for sure.
Nice. Stacy is asking of the 150 acres that Shadowrun has, how many of them are planted? How many are vineyards?
Mm. Only 5 acres are planted. So I think I've got enough water and deer fence to maybe double that. But right now it's an acre of Viognier, an acre of Malbec, an acre of Grenache, an acre of Syrah, and an acre of Petit. And the rest of the property is wild. It's hills and shrub brush and manzanita and obviously oaks and pines and bobcats and occasionally a bear or a lion. Um, and I kind of like it the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the issue is you hear these ranches or vineyards with huge acreage, but it doesn't mean that every single acre is plantable. I mean, you could, what do you think your total plantability is at that property? I mean, it sounds like you're probably pushing up against the max right now.
Well, I mean, if I wanted to put in more water and a bigger deer fence. So I always forget there's more to Shadow Run if you keep going south on Wapanza. So southeast of the vineyard is another 10 acres that we let a neighbor use to run his cows on.
Hmm.
So I've got cattle ranches on all four sides of me. Um, so it really so Shadow Run is basically shaped like a boot, and the sole of the boot is on Wapanza, and the foot part of the boot kind of looks like a winery and vineyard, but the leg part is where it gets real rugged, and
Ah,
there's a 300-foot ridge that runs the length of it, and it's a great hike. If you get over it, go to the back. There's a saddle that we call the Upper Meadow. But yeah, there's probably like 30 acres up front you could plant, but I don't anticipate. I mean, if I add, an acre of Grenache Blanc in the next couple of years, and an acre or something else, that's speedy enough growth for me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Keeping things small, which is exciting. Beautiful. Take us through how you made this wine, because this is the 25. So this has your fingerprints all over it.
Yeah,
I won't say literally, but you were the one responsible for this vintage. So when were you bringing the grapes in? What was your thinking? Were you kind of following the protocol of previous vintages, or was there anything that you decided to do a little differently with this one now that you had the reins?
sure. So it's funny, harvest came quick, and I would say the first maybe 3 to 4 weeks, when I think the first to go was the Viognier was the first grape to get ripe. And I was taking extremely detailed notes, and I didn't do anything without kind of thinking it through on paper.
Mhm.
Um, I would say by week 3 or 4, when I had 4 or 5 different varietals going, and there's going to be another two harvested the next week, there was no time to write anything down. It was just, it was like 10, 12 hour days, 7 days a week. So once again, kind of a blur, but I'll walk you through. So the Grenache Blanc I bought from the owner of BPS, Randy. His got ripe very early because they're very young vines. Um, and I did something a little different. Normally, when the grapes come out of the vineyard, you hit them with about 50 parts per million SO2 to knock back anything funky going on
Mhm.
until you
That's
can get
sulfur dioxide for those.
sulfur dioxide,
Yes.
or some people just say sulfur. And that protects the color, it prevents it from oxidizing, knocks back any bacteria until fermentation starts. Once fermentation starts, you don't got to worry about anything because the yeast are out competing everything else. There's so much going on, nothing else could survive. Well, I thought I would be kind of new school, and instead of using SO2 to protect it, I used something called a non-Saccharomyces yeast,
Oh,
which does what yeast does in terms of outcompeting bacteria. The only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't turn sugar into alcohol, which is
oh,
fermentation.
right.
So, and one issue with that is SO2 kills that. So you can't go like belt and suspenders. It's one or the other. So I did that, and it made me nervous. So I had to be really careful about moving the juice around. Um, with both the Grenache Blanc I bought from Randy and the Grenache Blanc I bought from Summerwood, about half fermented in barrel and half fermented in tank. I wanted to do a cool fermentation to preserve the fruit flavors. But one discovery I had is on a tank, if you want it to be 57 degrees, you just turn a knob. But then you're looking at all the grape juice you just put in a barrel, and you're wondering how you're going to get it down to 56 degrees. And then, of course, once fermentation starts, it starts creating heat.
Yeah.
So you have to make it start really slow. There was one particular batch that took off a little too fast and was a little too warm. The only thing I could think of was one, taking it outside every night with the forklift, and two, shoveling dry ice into it,
Hmm.
which I've heard of other people doing. Nobody mentioned that if you shovel in quickly, it's going to create a geyser of
Yeah.
wine that lasts
Yeah.
like 10 seconds. You're watching the stuff you've been
It's
trying to
the
protect
it's
shoot up in the air.
The Mentos effect,
Yeah,
basically.
that would have been a great Mentos commercial. Um, but that was with the first batch of white I worked with. By the time I got to the next white, then the Viognier, then the Rosé, I had fewer adventures. So yeah, half fermented in tank, and ended up getting aged in barrel, and half fermented in barrel and ended up getting aged in tank. Generally, the stuff in tank preserved the nose better. The stuff in barrel gets a little bit better mouthfeel, a little bit nicer flavor. And then, so I've got two batches of Grenache Blanc, each are half in tank, half in barrel. And thank goodness I've got a girlfriend with a super sophisticated palate. So she's the most sensitive instrument in the barrel room. So I would just bring her in and make her taste different concoctions, and she'd say that tastes like Moonshadow, or she's like, this one tastes more expensive. All right, that's the one. That's all you had to say. Um, and at the end of the day, and I also needed to use some of the Grenache Blanc for the Viognier blend, and so I had to pick one that would go well with that. So this is primarily the Summerwood Grenache Blanc that aged in tank. That's
Okay.
the one I got last. So it's the youngest. And because it was in tank, it ages the slowest. So it was the youngest, crispest, most kind of zingy flavor. But the idea is that it'll kind of calm down over time. And it's a Grenache Blanc. It's supposed to be like that.
Right. Interesting. Um, yeah, no, it's one of our favorites. I know Teresa loves this wine and she's a white wine connoisseur. How do you think this vintage differs from previous vintages of the Moon Shadow?
It to me, it's a lot different. So I think it tastes a little sweet. A lot of people tell me that all the whites and the rosé taste a little sweet. I promise you, they are all 100% dry. I think um, I think what I did different from my mom, in addition to not hitting it with a bunch of SO2 to protect it, during fermentation, I stirred every barrel and every tank twice a day,
Mm,
which encourages contact between the yeast cells and the juice. And I forget the molecule that creates, but it gives the impression of sweetness. So I
mhm.
would say my wine, they're a little bit lushier. Uh, I don't know. What do you think? You've had quite a few vintages.
No, there's a richness to this wine. So you're basically fermenting and then aging these. Are you aging these, sur lees on the lees to sort of
Yeah.
add that extra body and richness? Because that's what, the extra time on the lees on those dead yeast cells will impart that kind of mouthfeel, that richer, more elegant, lush mouthfeel to it, which I always get off of your whites, especially. They have that like I don't want to call it an East Side uh, profile, but it does feel like the East Side white wines do tend to have that richer, fuller mouthfeel, maybe a little more oily on the Viogniers and the
Yep.
Roussins, but even the Grenache Blanc can have a fullness, not as lean as some of the Grenache Blanc you find on the west side of Paso.
Yeah. So the Sirah thing, which basically means after fermentation, you've got all these dead yeast cells, and you can rack the wine off of, there's a couple inches of that stuff in the bottom, rack it off into tank, clean out the barrel, dump all that stuff, put the wine back in. But there's two things to think about. One is that it's a little dangerous to have thick lees in there because if you've got yeast cells that can't get any oxygen because it's thick, if anything funky is going to happen, that's where it's going to happen. So you have to be a small enough winery to be able to like smell and taste, like stick a stir wand in there and pick up some lees and smell and taste it every couple of days. Um, but but the idea is if it's a little bit thinner, if it's like an inch and a half, it's less dangerous. And if nothing funky happens, it actually serves as like a hospital for the white wine. If anything goes wrong, it's antioxidant, it's protective. So my mom was so intense about Sir Lee's that she wouldn't get the wine off the lees until like the day before it was filtered, which was the day before it was bottled, and she would
Right.
just be panicked for the time between when it came off the lees to when it got into bottle because she thought something could go wrong.
That's when oxidation can happen, God
Yeah,
forbid.
and white wines are delicate. A red wine,
Yeah.
I don't worry about them at all. I mean, a barrel of red wine could fall out of the back of the truck and it'd be fine. Roll it home, whatever. But white wines are very delicate. Oxygen, lots of things can mess them up, but particularly oxygen.
Yeah, it's funny. I think most people's opinion is, oh, reds must be the most difficult to make, then whites, then rosés. Rosés are the easiest. And it's actually the opposite, where rosés are the most difficult wines to make, then white wines, and reds, for the most part, are like the old Ronco commercials, the set it and forget it, pretty much.
Yeah, like the Toyota, they push off the cliff and it still runs. So much so that like when you're going to introduce oxygen to white wine is either if you forget to go check on it, if there's any headspace, any air between the
Right.
top of or more likely it's when you're moving the wine from
Mm.
barrel to tank or wherever. And we usually use a forward pressure pump. And you can be as careful as you want. You're going to get a little bit of oxygen in there. So I did something also that my folks never did is I figured out that even some of our biggest tanks, they can be lifted with a forklift. So whenever I was moving wine out of tank, instead of using the pump, I would just clear out the barrel room, get the forklift in there, lift the tank, use a single hose, fill the receiving tank with argon, and run the wine with gravity.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Interesting. Food pairings with this particular wine. What do you like to serve with this? What would you normally serve with this?
So generally anything that's not too big or spicy. Like if I was having like the obvious stuff like lighter cheeses, seafood. If it was spicy Thai whitefish, you got to go with our beignet.
Hmm.
If it was like a chicken bowl, you'd go with our beignet. But anything a little lighter or more delicate, or like a soup with a really rich cheese, and you need something to kind of cut through that heavy cheese.
Yeah. Matt says you're hitting all of my pleasure points there, Matt. The luscious
Excellent.
seared scallops on a sweet corn puree with a peach beurre blanc sauce. Like I
Wow.
could absolutely see this with like a corn puree or even like a corn cake would go so well with it. And the scallops, like my initial thought was actually lobster, like because you have that delicate sweetness, but I think, oh, there they are. There's the dish right there.
Whoa. All right. If you want to make that again, I'll bring the moon shadow.
Yes. Aaron is willing to come down to Long Beach to bring wine to you if you're willing to make that. But yeah, I think anything that's got a little bit of that sweetness or that richness, because compared to the Viognier that you have, which is still a delicious wine, but this one's got a little more acidity and brightness to it. So like to me, the other one that just sprung to mind when I was drinking this was a fettuccine Alfredo, like that
Mm.
kind of really rich cream sauce. I think with just, having that little bit of lemon note, that acidity, that apple just kind of knocks it out of the park on this one.
Mm.
Okay. So I hit it so well, he doesn't even have to respond. He's just
no, I was
silently
no, I was, I
nodding.
was thinking
Yes.
about the next time I'm going to have
Do you want to
Moonshadow with
do you want to just
fettuccine
tip your cap
alfredo.
to me? That's fine
Yeah,
too. It's
you,
good.
you get it. You
Awesome.
get this one. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, let's move on to the Jolie. Perfect. And I want to talk a little bit about your journey into the wine. So again, you were down living in Orange County. You were coming up on the weekends. I mean, did you have an interest in making the wine? Was it just sort of like, I'm going to keep doing my own thing down south and I'll come up and work the tasting room every now and then, work a little bit during harvest, but like um it sounds like it was kind of during COVID that things pivoted for you and I don't know if it was just out of necessity or out of a passion, but you decided, okay, I need to really get much more involved in the winemaking side of things here.
Yeah. Initially, I was more interested in the sales side
Hmm.
because, up here in Paso, winemakers are a dime a dozen. But if you're in Irvine and you walk into your favorite restaurant with a half drank bottle of wine from the night before and say, "Hey, we're winemakers. Would you like to try it?" Like they always buy a couple cases. So I was more interested in selling the wine and hosting parties and pouring at parties, and my folks seem to have the whole like vineyard winemaking thing. They seem to have locked down, and I was not a handy guy at all. Um, and also I think I saw a lot of what was above the surface. I don't think I understood all the kind of nerve-wracking decision making that goes into winemaking. And so I don't know, it didn't look too hard to me, but I felt like someone was already doing it. It wasn't until I guess as I got more and more involved, I didn't really want to make any changes, but I would say, okay, if we're trying to get from point A to point B, like, is there a slightly easier, more efficient way to do this? And then I went and did that harvest internship at Booker,
Hmm.
where you're keeping up with these like, 30-year-old production guys, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And they are super good at their job. And
You're
they
basically living off of cocaine and Coors Light, pretty much.
Reds and yeah, no, it was
Marlboro Reds. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it was an insane amount of work, but like keeping up with those dudes who everything they do, it's extremely precise because they're trying to save their backs. They can't lose a single drop of wine. It's like a
Mhm.
personal pride thing. So keeping up with and they were really patient teachers. Like, if it takes whatever, an hour and a half to clean a 13,000 gallon tank, they would spend 3 hours walking through every detail. You're just cleaning something, but there's a lot of details. And then they'd be like, okay, those 10 tanks are yours. We'll see you in a week or whatever. After going through that, which thank God I did that, I started having pretty strong opinions about like how wine should be moved around and how stuff should get cleaned and sanitized. And I mean, I didn't go there to learn how to clean stuff. I went there because I really wanted like a 4 hour a week job, like just enough so I could steal all their best practices. And not necessarily because I thought there's something unique about them, just because they're a winery who invests a lot of time discovering what the latest practices are coming out of various universities and different big wineries. And West Siders all talk to each other. Whereas on the East Side, we're all cowboys. No one talks to anyone, and we make wine our own way. But anyway, going there to have that, I started getting a little more particular about how I wanted to do stuff in the barrel room. But it really wasn't until the day that they announced they were leaving. And then the day after that, so, my dad being an engineer and all the equipment being his, he was pretty particular about, all the equipment and tractors and forklifts and all that stuff. And, they made that announcement. And then later that day, I was trying to load a 1/2 ton bin full of pressed grapes into the back of the truck, and I'd been too lazy to put the right forks on the forklift. I was using like the
Mm,
wrong, like the forks you use to dump bins,
yeah.
and like it went sideways, and like the forklift was kind of askew, and the grapes were spilling out. And my dad drove by and looked at me and just went, "Hey, have fun! I'm out of here." And then after that, that's when it was, yeah, it was on. And and once you're working by yourself, you don't. There's no time to think. You just gotta start making decisions quickly.
Yeah. So you basically did this entire harvest single-handedly. I mean, you really had no one else there.
No.
How many tons did you bring in?
So let's see. Um, let's see. I think the rosé was about 4.5. Let's say maybe like 17 tons, something
Wow.
like that. So a lot for one person to handle. I was lucky to have my girlfriend moved up here and she would kind of pick up the pieces. So I was ignoring the business and the tasting room and the animals, and so she kind of helped look after that stuff. And yeah, I felt bad. It would be my day in the tasting room, and I'd say, okay, I just have to do one thing in the barrel room this morning, and then she wouldn't hear from me until 8 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
and there'd be a text, "We're out of chips and beer in here," and there's still winemaking that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's like I have one thing to do. It's just I have to rack,
Mm.
97 barrels or whatever it is into different things or
Yeah, and I think doing something for your first time after like watching someone else do it for 20 years, you're pretty ready to like launch into it. So I probably overdid it. Like I did, I was like making multiple batches of each of the varietals of red, one a little
mm,
more tannic and one less tannic. And, I really want to do it as well as it could be done. So I was pretty ambitious. And when I started, I didn't know as much as I do now. So I may have made it a little more work than it had to be, but I'm
interesting.
happy with the results.
Nice. Well, you mentioned the 4 tons of Petit Sirah you brought in for the rosé. So
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about the Jolie, which is a wine you guys do very small batches of, and it seems like you sell out of this every year. Um, at what point did you start making the rosé, and what was the decision behind making a rosé of Petit Sirah? Obviously, you grow Petit Sirah, but you mentioned you also grow some Grenache there, which is, kind of the industry standard for rosé here in Paso Robles.
Right. So I think we started making rosé because my mom would do what's called a saignée with the reds, where you
Hmm.
throw away 15% of the juice,
Right.
because then you've got more skins to juice ratio, so it's more intense. And I think my dad was having a conniption that we're throwing juice away. So they decided to make a rosé, and they went with Petit. Excuse me, but they were harvesting Petit on a date that was designed to make the best red wine they could make, not
Hmm.
necessarily a rosé.
Gonna
So it
say
was,
later in the year, so higher Brix level, higher sugar level, you
yeah,
know.
higher, which translates to higher alcohol, a
Right.
brighter color. Yeah, the first few bottles we made, it was like Barbie pink and 16% alcohol, but fun. It was popular. Um, and I wanted to make a rosé because we keep running out of white wine, and so having a rosé on the menu is kind of like having another white. Um, but when I did it, I decided to use all the Petit, so I could pick a harvest date that was better for rosé. Um, and I went with Petit because that's what my folks did, so it seemed appropriate. I kept the same bottle, it's
Mhm.
a little Bordello or whatever, but I don't know. Rosé is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to
Yeah.
be too serious.
Surprised you haven't gotten a cease and desist from Miraval and Angelina.
You know what's funny is the first bottle of Jolie we made right when it was getting bottled. I think Angelina Jolie came out with her rosé like 6 months later.
Nice.
So there's probably some confusion.
Nice. So take us through the rosé production method. You guys are obviously doing some skin contact with this, but since it's Petit Sirah, a grape that has a naturally darker skin, more
Mm.
purple, more black to it. Minimal skin contact. What sort of a maceration are you doing on it? Kind of take us through the production of the rosé.
Sure. So I believe with the rosé, so the way you make rosé is you obviously you harvest red grapes, but you process them as if they were white grapes,
Hmm.
meaning that the grapes and skins and juice don't all ferment together. You want to get the juice off the grapes basically as fast as possible. With white wine, it's because the skins don't really contribute anything except turn it a little orange. And with red wine or rosé, the reason you get it off as fast as possible is you don't want a Barbie pink rosé, especially because like really light colored rosés are very much in style. Everybody's making them out of Grenache. So I wanted to get it off pretty quick. But as a one man show, things can only happen as fast as they can happen. So I
Right.
think I harvested on one day, and I just packed all the bins with dry ice and wrapped them up, and then I pressed the next morning. So say 24 hours, um, and kind of the same drill with the rosé as I did with the whites, where about half of it fermented in tank and about half in puncheons, which are like double sized barrels. And
Hmm.
these were neutral puncheons, so it's not going to impart a lot of oak flavors. It's just going to do what oak does in terms of like letting a little bit of oxygen in to soften it up. And I made a whole bunch of it. I don't know, something like 250 cases. And once again, my girlfriend, who has a really sensitive palate, she when she was barrel tasting, she's like, "This is going to be your wine." And I like the way it turned out. I like the way color turned out. Before I filtered it, it was this kind of like dusty rose. It was really pretty. Now it's more kind of like a pink with a little bit of iridescent orange in it. But I'm happy with
Dusty Road, falling on hard times.
it.
Let me tell you right now. Sorry for all you wrestling fans out there, you got that reference. Um, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, as somebody who just came from a blind rosé wine tasting where we tasted 29 different rosés, and the first 20 were all the same, like salmon to onion skin color. It is refreshing to have a true pink rosé out there. Not quite Tavel, but definitely leaning into that heavier pink style. So you are. I mean, you mentioned your one man band in winemaking, but are you harvesting yourself as well, or do you have teams? Are you finding teams out there to help you harvest? Because that's
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Oh yeah, there's no way. There's no way I could do the harvest. I've got a labor contractor. I give her maybe a week's notice,
Okay.
so I've got to figure out when the grapes are going to be ready to go, and they're ready when they're ready, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it. And she would send out a crew of 8 to 12 laborers. They get there at like 6 in the morning, and we tell them you'll get paid for a full day, but you can go home as soon as the grapes are harvested. So they
Right.
freaking hustle to get everything done while it's still cold. They're always done by like 10 in the morning, something like that. And
Yeah.
for me, harvest is an easy day because I'm watching these guys do their things. I'm weighing the bins as they come in out of the vineyard and safely tucking them into the barrel room. So it's everything after that that's stressful.
Yeah. Although I imagine for the whites, I mean, because are you pretty much pressing as soon as everything comes in? Obviously, with reds and the whites, you run a crush, you let that maceration happen. But whites are generally press and go unless you're maybe dry icing them and kind of waiting for the next day.
Yeah. There were a couple times where I was able to harvest in the morning and press that night.
Mhm.
I remember it's 2 in the morning. I'm waiting for the press to finish the last load. My girlfriend's passed out on the crush pad with pizza and an empty beer can next to her, and I decided, okay, moving forward,
Cheap date.
yeah, I know it's a pretty good deal. I decided moving forward, I'm going to shovel in some dry ice, wrap it up, and I'll do it the next day.
Got it. Nice. No, it's a, I mean, I will readily admit that Petit Sirah is in my like bottom three grapes of all time. I just
Mm,
there are very few Petit Sirahs that I find enjoyable. But I'm really enjoying this rosé. It's got a lot of flavor, a lot of fruit, a lot of character, which
mm,
is nice. And this
thank
is
you.
a direct press. You mentioned you did all of your estate Petit Syrah as a rosé this year, so you didn't use any Petit for your reds.
Nope. Yeah, I have a decent amount of uh, Petit as a red wine in stock,
Hmm.
and I can always make more. So I decided to go all rosé. So I think I made something like 250 cases.
Yeah, that's a good amount. You definitely need to pour at the rosé roundup on June
Yeah,
28th.
yeah. I'm bummed I missed the event at Hubba. It was a little like friendly competition.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
Well,
going to start entering this.
yeah, definitely be there June 28th. That'll be a good event to help you sell some cases, I imagine, of this.
Right
But
on.
food pairings with the Jolie.
I haven't totally figured that out yet. Although I have to say, of all the wines, it's probably the one we drink the most of.
Uh,
Um, let's see. I'm doing a wine and cheese pairing this upcoming weekend, and based on a phone call to Vivant, the
mhm.
cheese place, Baby Swiss is probably the cheese you would pair with this.
Okay.
Definitely nothing sweet. I don't
Yeah.
want anything to overwhelm the the fruit flavors. Not salad. No wine goes with salad.
No.
Um,
And you can't make friends with salad, as
no.
Homer and Bart Simpson once let us know. Um, yeah, it's an interesting rosé because I do feel like it's more of a like kick back and drink rosé than a food pairing rosé. I mean, there is acidity there, but it's a really round, full. It almost has a fruit punch characteristic to it, and I say that
Mhm,
in a positive way, not a
mm,
negative way.
mm. And I think it depends on the temperature.
Yeah,
I like it ice cold. I keep getting text messages from my folks that I need to try it a little bit warmer. They really enjoy it that way, but I like it crisp and by itself. So,
yeah. I mean, to me, this would go really well with I could see like grilled chicken dishes,
mm,
or even like a roasted chicken would go really well.
mhm,
Go grab the Costco rotisserie chicken. I think this would be
mm,
a nice wine to pair with it.
mm,
Um, I could also see this with like because it's got such fruit, the acidity is milder on it, like
mhm,
doing something like prosciutto that has a saltiness.
mhm,
Charcuterie, I think this is a nice wine to pair with
mm.
charcuterie, like salami, capicola, um, prosciutto, sopressata. I think these will all go really well with this.
Fantastic. And by the way, if anyone discovers any good food pairings, please send them over to me.
Yeah.
I think you've
Well,
all got my
Matt,
email address.
again, reading our mind with
Mm,
the salty Italian meats,
mm,
grilled prosciutto wrapped peaches with arugula, goat cheese, and a peach. Is that peach? Yes, peach balsamic reduction. Wow.
mm.
And Pam did
Serious.
this. Pam did this with first local tomatoes and burrata. So yeah, we're definitely leaning towards more of that Italian kind of flavor to it.
Mm,
Yeah, burrata, I could definitely see this. The richness of burrata with the little acidity that's in this. I think that'd be phenomenal. And then
mm,
obviously having the acid from the tomatoes. Yeah, no, I think that's a great pairing. Good
mm.
suggestion, Pam. Thank you. Excellent job there. Perfect. All right, let us move on to the Reds, and we're going to talk about the 2022 Descent, the Malbec, estate grown. I know you had a pretty big hand in bringing Malbec to Shadow Run, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to grow more of it. 'Cause, we've mostly got Rhone varietals, and it's cool to have a Bordeaux. I look at wine lists in Paso, and I don't see a lot of Malbec on there.
No.
Uh, when we were first making it, we were making it out of that half acre of Malbec, and that strain alone, it was an interesting wine to me. And I don't know if you remember this. It always had like a juicy berry twist to it, like a
Hmm.
Knott's Berry Farm
Poison,
razzleberry poison.
boysenberry, yeah, that kind of
Yeah,
flavor to it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I would call it, kind of a juicy twist. Well, now that the second batch of Malbec grapes have come online and it's a blend of the two, I think it's a much more balanced wine.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the wine that everybody got in their shipment, the 22, the biggest thing going on with that one is the vintage. 22 was a miserably hot summer. Instead, it was the end of the drought, right before we just got rain dumped on us in 23.
Yeah.
Uh, Harvest came about 3 weeks early. It was fairly traumatic by the time we realized it was going to be early and we could get on the horn with our labor contractor. She had just gotten 20 phone calls from other wineries. Uh, so instead of getting like 3.5 tons per acre, we got maybe 1 ton per acre.
Oh
So we
gosh.
we made very little wine, but I remember in barrel thinking this tastes as good as anything I've ever tasted in barrel. And all the 22s were like that. Sadly, we only made, maybe 50 cases of each, but they were wildly popular. This is the only one we still have in stock, and we released it late. And I'm holding back some of the 21 descent because it's so high in acid and structure. It's just going to lay down so well. But this one's very approachable, very plump, very easy to like. And this one I can tell you straight off with food pairings, nothing acidic. Like you literally have this with like meat and cheese. And I've tasted all of our wines against steak, and this one is definitely the winner. So if you need a steak wine, it's the Malbec.
Nice. Yeah, it's I've always been a big fan of your Malbec, and thought this is the grape that could really help define Shadow Run. Why the name Descent for Malbec?
So yeah, what was I thinking? So this is the first label I ever designed, and I did this maybe back in 2012. And looking at it now, I think either I was going through a goth phase or anyway, the name of the property is Dark Shadow Run. We make particularly unusually dark reds. Um, I kind of wanted to stick with that theme, so I wanted the label to kind of have like a kind of a you don't know what's coming over that hill
Yeah.
kind of vibe with an oak tree on the property. If I did it again now that I know how to trim trees, I'd pick an oak tree that had been properly trimmed. But I think descent was like like descending into like a inky dark pool.
Mhm.
That was the idea.
Nice. And this was Malbec was not one of the first grapes you planted on the property. So what was kind of the impetus to plant Malbec?
Well, initially it was that girl that went to Argentina and came back
Oh,
with a few
right.
bottles
Yes.
and handed it off to my folks, and they decided to plant it. And I told them no good will come of this grape, but I was wrong, and they were all right. And I'm really glad we planted it. And it is unique, and I always keep some in the tasting room, even if it's
Yeah.
not for whatever reason it's not on the menu. I always have some available in case somebody walked in because they know we have Malbec.
Right. It's no, it's I mean, but it's still a big leap to go from just tasting those wines to deciding to plant it. So did
Yeah.
you guys do any research as to whether your particular area, your the AVA and the terroir that you're located in Paso would work well with Malbec, or was it just sort of a like, fuck it, let's go kind of
What
thing?
what what could go wrong?
Right.
Well, my dad is an analytical like I am, but my mom is very much a driver. We're going this way. Um, but they were working with consultants at the time. So like our first vineyard consultant was Hillary Graves, who's a big deal now, and she had access. Her professor at Cal Poly, he was a big guy, Dr. Patterson, back in the day. So I'm sure they talked to them, and I don't think anyone told them it wouldn't work. We've got neighbors who grow cab and sell it for um, uh, really high prices. So, and maybe that's why they only planted a half acre. They were kind of rolling the dice.
Hmm, interesting. Um, yeah, because cab is the easy sell for everybody.
Uh-huh.
But to go with Malbec, it's such a unique varietal, and one that I think actually does well in Paso because it does tend to be kind of it's not as late ripening as like a Petit Verdot or
Right.
a Cab Franc,
Mhm.
but it requires some time and some heat, and in parts of Paso it can work very well. You
Well,
guys
let
are
me, sorry,
Go ahead.
if I can just throw in, this is top of mind since now that I bottled, I'm spending a ton of time in the vineyard. Um, the Malbec vines are by far the most vigorous here in our soil, which is kind of curious. Um, they definitely, they need the right blend of nutrients to do well here. Sometimes I think back in the day, we had to add zinc was the big problem.
Mm,
But what's unique about Malbec is it produces really amazing grapes 2 years on and 2 years off. Well, I've heard different theories. I've heard once every 4 years it has its best harvest, and I've heard 2 years on and 2 years off. So you kind of have to pay attention to that. But that's all.
that's interesting. Why
Yeah.
why is that? Or do you have, I mean, have you discovered a reason for that?
I haven't, and I'm not sure. I think the last time I looked, nobody knew why. Although there's way more science around vineyard stuff and winemaking than there was a few years ago.
Hmm, interesting. But yeah, it is. I mean, it being Rhone varietal, you think it would be more commonly planted, but it is very rare here in Paso. I can pretty much list on one hand the number of wineries I know that are doing 100% versions of Malbec.
Yeah.
But, you know, like juiciness to me is always one of those telltale signs with Malbec. Like to me, the best Malbec should have this really, like they should have deep flavors, but there should be a juiciness, which I guess is that kind of acidic balance with the
Mhm.
tannins, so that there's kind of a mouth-watering characteristic with this wine.
This, I always thought of Malbec. I remember living in Orange County. I would go to maybe Havanas and have
Mm,
order a Malbec to go with a steak. And to me, it was
right.
always kind of like a very manly kind of sparse wine. There's a lot of
Yeah.
uh, kind of tannic, and ours is the exact opposite. It's just lushy and rich and easy to like. So
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful wine. Take us through a little bit of the terroir. You guys are located in the Creston Highlands region of Paso, which I always tell people is pretty much like lots and lots of vineyards, very, very few wineries.
yeah,
I think I can name four wineries in the entire Creston Highlands area, pretty much.
yeah,
So take us through what makes your AVA, your region, unique from everybody else.
sure. So, like the soil is more sandy and less clay compared to the west side. So, like on the west side, they have to be really careful about overwatering, or the roots will get wet feet. On the east side, if we turn off the water, it goes through the soil pretty quick. So
Mhm.
we have a lot more control. Um, Shadow Run itself is, well, it's an ancient seabed. Like when I go hiking up on these hills, I find seashells all the time. I don't know exactly how that contributes, although I have asked AI a number of times and it gave me some really interesting thoughts. It was scary. I have Jen write the tasting notes and then I ask AI and like the Venn diagram of how much they overlap. I'll tell AI I harvested on this date. These were all the numbers. Here's my address. What should it taste like? And it gets scarily close. But
So Jen is AI, is what you're saying.
Jen, maybe they're talking to each other.
Mm,
I would say, although what's a little bit different about us is I mean, real estate on the east side is simply less expensive than it is on the west side. So
right.
people specifically use lower cost farming methods
Mm,
because they plan on selling their grapes for a lower amount.
mm.
Whereas on west side, they have to use really better, more expensive farming methods to sell grapes for a rate that can pay for the real estate. But there's no reason you can't use West Side farming practices on the East Side, which is exactly what we do. And when I was doing that internship at Booker, I had access to the lab, so I'd bring in grapes and ask the lab assistant to test them for me. And they'd be like, "Are you sure you're on the east side? Are you?" They'd be like, "You need to harvest now. The color's not going to get any higher." And I'd come back, I'd have them tested again 3 days later, and the GM would yell at me from the Eagle's Nest, "You've got 1,400 color. You need to harvest that stuff." So once again, I mean, soil is important, terroir is important, but really, I think uh, diligence in your
Yeah.
farming practices is what's most important.
Well, yeah. And you've had 20 years of
Mm.
harvests at this point. It's scary to say that, I know. I'm sorry. But to really get to know your grapes and your terroir and your region, and I think that clearly that local knowledge plays a huge part in your winemaking, I imagine.
And thank God I have cool neighbors like Dan, the guy that
Yeah,
manages Shell Creek.
right.
That guy's been at it a long time. And anyway, I have a lot of people I can lean on.
Yeah, but even Shell Creek's doing, I mean, that's Chenin Blanc and Valdiguet. Like those are completely different grapes than what you guys are working with over there.
Yeah, I guess I lean on him more for let's see, pest control,
Mm, yeah,
managing irrigation systems, which
yeah.
is quite a thing.
More the
Um,
nuts and bolts, like the logistics of
yeah,
the winemaking rather
manageability.
than the grapes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful. You mentioned steaks several times with the descent, so I imagine that's kind of what we're leaning into with this guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've got Argentinian skirt steak with chimichurri and harissa roasted honey carrots.
Oh,
Honestly, like which culinary school did you go to? You
I
guys
was just
are,
going to ask.
yeah, you guys are always awesome. It's oh, there it is. They were smart enough to take photos to make everybody
Nice,
else jealous.
gorgeous.
Yes.
We should do. Remember the Mardi Gras thing we did with
Yes, I
the
do remember
chef and
that.
the
Yeah.
wine?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be
I still have Chef Marie's contacts. We
okay.
could do
Nice.
something. Awesome. All right. Last but not least, we're gonna jump on to the Raven.
Mm.
This is really your newest wine.
Hmm.
This is the newest label that you guys have created, and it is, I will be honest, this is truly the most unique blend I have seen in Paso Robles in quite some time. This is two-thirds, 67% Petit Sirah and 33% Malbec. So it is technically a Rhone Bordeaux blend, if accept that Durif is part of the Rhone varietals, and obviously Malbec is a Bordeaux varietal. But how did this wine come about?
So, okay, great story, actually. So you said it's the most recent. We actually made it once in 2013,
Oh,
and it was by accident.
did you
So,
call it Raven back then?
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
in way different bottle. What's funny is it was powder blue.
Hmm.
The exact color, the Marvel character or the X-Men character, uh, Raven, Mystique. It
Oh,
was
yeah,
that
yeah.
color blue, not on
Okay,
purpose. It just
got
worked
it.
out. Anyway,
Great.
so back then, the 2013 harvest, once again, we're small enough, we can smell and taste each barrel and decide what to do with each barrel individually. We had one barrel of Petit and we had one barrel of Malbec that at the 18-month mark were too young, wound up, tannic, and we decided to hold them back. Maybe we'd pour them down the drain or maybe we'd do something with them. And so we held on to them. And then a year later, when we're going to bottle the 2014s, so these two barrels have now been in barrel for 30 months, my folks thought they tasted as good as anything we'd ever made. And
Mhm.
so it's a weird blend, but then at least it would be a vintage if we blended it together. They liked it. I was at their house, I was in the kitchen. They pointed at me, said, "Come up with a name." And I said Raven because once again, the theme here is kind of dark. When I said Raven, I was thinking of like a woman's hair color, Raven.
Oh, I thought you had just seen the X-Men movie.
No, uh, yeah, that's what I was thinking. But now
Or
that
the
we were,
Sims or the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode.
well, what's funny is the year they named our Petite Eclipse was the same year that a Twilight movie came out with the name Eclipse. So
Uh,
they keep accidentally coinciding with pop culture. But uh, but when we work out in the fields, there are ravens that follow us around. So now it's Raven the bird. Anyway, so we only made 50 cases. Back then, I think we were selling our wine for $30 a bottle.
Mm.
And we came up with a new label. We marked the price up to something like $48, which we thought was a ton of money. And it sold out like immediately. So when I moved up here, I'm like, why don't we do that again? But on purpose. And so that's what we do. Each year we taste each barrel of Malbec against each barrel of Petit, and we picked the two that go best together. In this case, it was 3 barrels to get it to taste right.
Mhm.
And also, our 2020 vintages and most people's 2020 vintages were very muted initially.
Yeah,
That was the fire year. People weren't sure what to do with them. We
right.
held ours back and released them later. And thank goodness they kind of hockey sticked a year ago. And all the 2020 started getting really nice,
Nice.
as did that one.
Yeah, you don't even have the 2020 vintage on
Well,
here.
technically, it's a non-vintage because we picked a barrel of 2020 Petit and a barrel of 2020 Malbec that tasted good together. But before once again, like I said, the 2020 vintages were kind of muted. We felt like it was too muted. So to kick it up a notch, we picked our favorite barrel of the 21 Petit and blended it in.
Oh,
That's what, so
okay.
I call it the 2020, but it's a non-vintage actually.
Right. But then you have a 22 Raven, and is that all
21,
tw 21?
20,
Okay,
the 21 is all 21.
got it.
And really, I mean, in the tasting room, I love doing verticals between them because the 20 is like softer, lusher. The oak is really nice. The 21 is a little more vibrant and structured. And I'd
Yeah.
say people are kind of 50-50 on which they like.
Yeah, the flavor profile in this is so unique because it starts off so dark up front, but then like mid palate and on the
Mm.
finish, it gets really juicy. Like that's
Mm.
where the acid sort of shows it's like it pulls back the mask and
Mm.
says, "Here I am. I'm still acidic." So, and I don't know which component that's coming from, the Malbec or the I imagine it's the Malbec because I think of Malbec as a juicier grape
Sure.
than PS. But I mean, I've had some, you know, uh, I don't know when they were picked, but there are some vineyards that can produce that very high acidic PS if you need it.
I would say, I mean, our petite tends to have good acidity, like the rosé. I also harvested it a couple weeks early to make rosé. The acidity was really good,
Right.
but I think the petite provides kind of the structure and the power, and then the Malbec gives it a juiciness to make it a little more playful than just
Yeah.
the petite by itself.
Very nice. So you have a 20, you have a 21.
Mhm.
Do you have other vintages in barrel or in bottle of the Raven? Is this something that you're going to be moving forward with or?
Uh, well, if we ever stop, somebody pointed out to me the last vintage has to be Nevermore.
Yes.
Um, so I don't know how I didn't think of that myself, but
Oh,
we
Lenore.
we didn't because so this stays in barrel for 30 months,
Mm,
which means so most barrels once a month for 18 months, maybe 2 liters of water evaporates. You replace it with 2 liters of wine. Well, you do that 18 times, it becomes a lot more concentrated. Well, you do it 30 times, it's that much more concentrated. And since it's more concentrated wine, it just takes longer to get nice to our palates. So
hmm
we've been holding these back, letting them get more time in bottle for a while. So I didn't want to make a bunch more when I still had some in stock. But I'm sure I'll make it again, or maybe I'll switch it up. Maybe it'll be a Syrah Malbec or something.
Yeah. How do you guys make that decision when it's time, to move a wine from barrel to bottle and then from obviously I imagine bottle to, selling is more of a financial decision when you run out of other vintages.
Well, the good news is we're small enough that we don't have like a particular brand of wine that needs to taste the same way every year.
Right.
And if we think something's going to be, we can make a bunch of different whatever we think is going to be interesting. And when people come in the tasting room, they're going to find something that they enjoy. And some people like all of them. So we don't necessarily have to have a target. And I'm more of a numbers guy. Like I kind of look at the process and I can tell you how it should taste when we're done. Whereas both my mom and my girlfriend are much more well sensory oriented and artistic, and they'll play with the wines and make recommendations, and I tend to lean on them for that.
Yeah. And you guys are using neutral barrels on this? New oak
Mm.
barrels?
The 2020 was new French oak, and I think the 21 was once used oak or a blend of once used and new French oak.
Okay. How do you guys do you like have a protocol for your oaking, or is that something you kind of taste through the wines and then make your decisions on what barrels you're going to use?
Yeah, so there isn't a specific protocol. It's not like, for example, at Booker, they know that with a particular varietal, they need, 70% new oak, and they order it long before they've
Right.
tasted the juice. Um, with us, it's more a matter of I look at what we buy a few new French barrels
Mhm.
every year. For 2025, I went out of my way to make the Malbec a little bit softer. And then I decided it needed a little more something, so it got the new French oak this year. Um, Also, I think there's enough going on in the wines that we don't necessarily want to introduce a lot of oak, so it's kind of barrel by barrel,
Mhm.
vintage by vintage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. Um, yeah, food pairings with the Raven. Obviously, we mentioned steak with the Descent, the Malbec. Um, this one's such a unique profile. Like, what do you normally like to pair with this? What goes well with this one?
Um,
If you need
so
to
I've had
consult the website, go ahead.
no, I was just looking at Matt's comment here. Coffee rubbed brisket with a blackberry reduction and smoked. Yeah, I think that would murder. Um, so I've had this with obviously a lot of different stuff. I mean, everything from pizza to steaks from the loading chute. Um, I've had it with, let's see, we bought lamb to try with the Syrah because
Hmm.
that's a classic pairing, and the lamb actually did much better with this than it did with the Syrah.
Hmm.
So I've had it with elk. Um, I think blue cheese adds a lot
Hmm.
to the pairing with whatever
Yeah,
meat you're going to serve.
I could see that the saltiness, that kind of yeah, that astringent saltiness note to a blue cheese with the juiciness and the richness. Yeah, that would be
Mhm.
very, very nice. I have to say, smoked Gouda mashed potatoes. I'm not a huge smoked Gouda fan, but oh my God, like yeah, feel free. Go ahead, get upset. That's all right. But I am like I am imagining smoked Gouda mashed potatoes in my mind, and I'm like, yes, please. Please bring those. Please bring an entire, you know, KFC bucket full of smoked Gouda mashed potatoes to me. That sounds delicious. I'm actually surprised I have not heard of more places doing smoked Gouda mashed potatoes. So that's a fascinating combo. Um, awesome. Well, Aaron, as we kind of wrap things up here, what does the future hold for Shadow Run? You're clearly doing things on your own at this point, so you've got a little more control. What do you have in barrel? What are things that are going to be released in the next few years that you guys have all set up? Are there any new blends, new combinations, maybe new grapes that you're looking at adding to your portfolio?
Um, so right now, the one wine that I'm not pouring that I really wish I was the Redhead, which
Hmm.
was at one time called the Redheaded Stepchild.
Yes.
The Syrah Grenache blend. That was my favorite of the 22s. And I love our 23s. The Untamed, the Petit Grenache blend, I think it's one of our best wines. The 23 Petit, I think it's going to go down as one of our better Petites. But frankly, the 23 Syrah and 23 Syrah Grenache are still really young tasting. So I'm
Hmm.
like on pins and needles, waiting for these things to come around because I want them to be as good as the other 23s. For 25, I've got a Malbec I'm pretty excited about. A Syrah I'm pretty excited about. The Syrah's on American oak. The Malbec is on a mix of new and neutral French oak. I made two different batches of the Grenache. I let one go dry on the skins to pick up all the tannins, and the other one I pulled off early so it'd be a little softer, so I can kind of use that to control the how tannic the blends are going to be. Um, and I think that'll be lovely. But it's not going to get bottled until June of next year.
Yeah.
In terms of new wines, right now, I'm mostly focused on manageability of the property.
Right.
I hang out with like drip lines a lot, like drip lines and emitters a lot, and like if you want to know anything about acids that clean or you know or wells or pumps or filters, that's what I'm into right now. So I'm trying to make this place. There's like those 50-foot sailboats that a single guy can sail somehow. I'm trying to make this ranch like that. So I'm mostly focused on manageability. And then after that I get to do fun stuff. Like, I don't know, I haven't made a GSM. I'd like to get my hands on some more ved. I'd like to make a sparkling wine, maybe out of the Viognier, or do a
No,
dessert.
don't do that. No,
Don't
no,
do, you
no
could
sparkling.
I'll talk to you about it. Well, you could
Yeah, no,
totally
no, 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 no. There's no reason to make sparkling. It's okay.
okay. Okay. Um, let's see. Uh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff I can do in the future after I make this place a little bit easier to run.
Yes. We need to find ways to automate. We need like you need a Twiggy from Buck
Yeah,
Rogers, like
I
just a
need
little
a
robot that goes around.
yeah, like an AI robot, like a handful of those would be.
Oh, there we go. There is the coffee rubbed brisket with the blackberry reduction and the smoked Gouda mashed potatoes.
I'm just going to copy and paste all this into an email to my girlfriend.
Yeah,
And see.
you really should. We have not tasted her food, but you say she's an excellent cook.
Yeah, she claims she never has, but she cooks like someone who's worked in a commercial kitchen. Pretty amazing.
Nice.
Let's see.
Fantastic. So all of the wines you mentioned, like those are all things in barrel, or are they, I mean, are they things you're going to blend together? Are they,
Okay. The so obviously the 23 redheaded stepchild, which it might get bottled as red door to match with the Syrah cellar door.
Mhm.
That's in bottle. I open a bottle every 2 weeks, hoping it's gonna be
Be
ready to
careful
go.
because there is a Red Door Ranch here in Paso that's making wine.
Oh
So
yeah.
just, so you don't get a cease and desist type of thing.
Well, I'd rather get sued by a ranch than a whole country. Like
That's fair.
some I've heard.
Like some of us have. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Touche,
uh,
asshole.
yeah. So no, so I've got the Syrah and the Syrah Grenache blend that I have high hopes for, that I would not let anyone taste until they're ready. And then I've got the 25s, the Malbec, Syrah, and Grenache in barrel. Um, but to me, I mean, I'm always excited to have new wines and include them in our wine club. Like, you always want to send people new, interesting stuff.
Mhm.
But to me, the wines change. The wines change in such an interesting way over the years that I just like to hang out with the same vintage. And the 21 Petit or 21 Descent is a lot different wine than it was a year ago, and that's always interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that, which is holding back a lot of an older vintage and
Yeah.
then being able to include that in a, wine club shipment or put it out for sale and say, like, you've tried this earlier, here's what you tasted. Now, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is later, like
Right.
here's how it's evolved. You're gonna want to try this if you don't have any bottles,
Hmm.
still in your cellar. You're gonna want to try this now because here's what you're gonna get. I think that's a really fun, unique way to do it that not a lot of wineries can kind of uh, hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah, it kills me that our customers have better collections of our old stuff than we do.
Yeah,
Every once in a while they'll bring our original. Somebody brought the first Raven we ever made to the last pickup party.
really.
And yeah, so I thought, well, if they've got these amazing collections, I should have a collection. So now I'm holding on to every vintage. I hold on to at least 5 cases.
Nice. So Stacy has a couple of questions for you. First, she wants to know what verticals of the Malbec do you have available? And then secondly, what is your favorite year of Malbec?
Ooh. So I would say I was going to say I was going to say 20, but the 20's gone. The 20 was interesting because the harvest numbers are like identical to the 25.
Did
So
we
it's,
have the last 20 at
yeah,
the
yeah.
loading chute the other night? Was that the absolute last one?
No, there's a handful, but
Okay.
the 21, I think I've still got 3 cases of the 21, and then I've still got maybe 15, 20 cases of the 22. And
Right.
the 21 and the 22 couldn't be more different because 21 was kind of a rock star year, high fruit, high acid, high structure, high everything. Um, Whereas the 22 is a much softer, more approachable year. So that's why I wanted to hang on to more of the 21. I think it's more versatile with food. I think it's going to age really well. So those are the two I got.
Interesting. Because yeah, 20 was, I mean, a lot of people consider 20 to be a, banner year in Paso Robles.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought, I'm going to be honest with you, my friend. When we had that Malbec, it was good, but it was just good.
No, no, no. It was terrible. If there was something off with that, if you open a Shadow Run wine, it should either be amazingly good or amazingly this needs to breathe and age a little bit, but
Right.
it shouldn't be boring. And that wine was boring. So something was off with that bottle. I'm going to go pop another 20 and make sure that doesn't happen again. But
Nice. So, obviously you've got kind of your you know, set of grapes that you're working with. Are there any varietals out there that you're really interested in working with or bringing in? Anything you want to either plant or, buy out there, something you're curious about, other
you
than
know,
the
I
sparkling, which we'll talk about, down the road.
I thought I was going to market myself as Paso's Senso guy. Um,
Ah, you're gonna go some so. Okay.
no,
All
no, no, no,
right.
no, 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 no. It, so no, I think I mean adding more ved and producing a GSM,
Yeah.
planting our own Grenache Blanc would be
Mm,
nice. So I'd have a little bit more control over
yeah.
that process. And then I have neighbors with cab vineyards that
Mhm.
they sell most of their grapes, but someone makes a few cases of wine for them and they drop them off. Some of
Right.
them are spectacular, so I might buy some cab. And also, I mean, I love Rhone varietals. That's what I grew up on. But I mean, a big cab can be pretty thrilling. So I might have
Oh,
to get into that.
absolutely. And I mean, with the juiciness of your Malbec in a cab, like
Mm.
even a cab petite Malbec blend would be
Wow.
super interesting. I mean, that would be
Yeah.
very intense, but
Yeah. It'd be pretty thick. Maybe get some Grenache in there to lighten it up.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's a heavy ass wine. That's like the deep purple of wines
Hmm.
right there.
Yeah. No one's ever liked a wine less because I put too much Grenache in it.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Grenache. It's funny. I always used to joke that Petit Sirah was basically winemaker's ketchup, which is you kind of put Petit Sirah in something and it kind of masks over all the flaws and
Mm.
just blankets it and kind of fixes everything, but
You, you
uniforms
know,
a wine.
which is interesting, because I don't get out much. So I think, well, some years our Petit is our best wine. So I've always thought of Petit Sirah as a fancy wine. I was quite in shock to find out not everybody in the world thinks that. But our Petit Grenache, also a very unusual blend, untamed, a
Yes.
little high in structure, needs a couple extra years to calm down, but thrilling,
Right.
depending on the vintage.
But
So
that's one in theory that makes a lot of sense because Petit is such a, rich, heavy wine with, not a lot of acid. And obviously
yeah.
Grenache brings a ton of acid and zing. So
Mhm.
it's a nice balance. It's kind of a ersatz or, Dollar Tree Rhone, basically. So nice. If folks want to do a tasting, come out and visit, buy more bottles of Shadow Run, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you, come out and visit,
Sure.
purchase?
I would love it if everybody followed us on social media. Facebook, I believe Facebook is, I think they're both Shadow Run Vineyards, but obviously just Google us. I am not hard to get a hold of. If you go to the website, that's my cell phone that's listed on the website. as is my email address. So just start with email, and then if anything goes sideways, call or text. We're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but if you just can't make it on one of those days, if you want to come in on a Monday through Thursday, since I live here, we're open by appointment. So just give me a few days notice, and I'll go open the tasting room.
Yeah. And it's always recommended if you're in Paso and you're going to go visit Shadow Run, definitely have dinner at the loading chute in Creston, or have a
Or lunch at the
cocktail at the Long Branch. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't know about downtown Creston, there's a cowboy dive bar that's been there since the 1930s, and you walk in and you know exactly where you are. But they got a chef and they make a world class burger. I wouldn't go rodeo weekend, or at least not after 6 p.m.
No.
Just a
But
little
but
rat.
the thing about the Long Branch, which always blows people's mind, is their wine collection and wine list is absolutely superb. Like, I don't
It's
know who's curating it, but they have phenomenal wines for a cowboy dive bar.
it's wildly ambitious. I don't know if
Yeah,
they've ever sold a bottle, but they have all the cool winemakers are on their list.
exactly. Which is ironic because the loading chute is arguably the best steakhouse in the entire Paso Robles region. It's that or the range down in Santa Margarita. But other than one particular wine that they carry there, their wines are absolute crap.
Bring your own wine, or if it's an emergency, you forget, just call me in advance and I'll leave a couple bottles outside the gate and you can
There you go. Yeah.
scoop that up
If
and
you're going
pay
to
the
get
corkage.
sparkling wine there, you're good because they do have the best bubbles in Paso located there, but
That's
everything else is terrible on their list. So,
that's right.
yes. But we're going to be doing a rosé roundup down there, which will be fun.
You, me, some wine tasters, and a whole bunch of cowboys. Rose
Yeah.
cowboys.
I met
That's
the owner of Arbuckle Ridge who's going to be pouring there today. So,
right on.
and Dialecta will be there. There's some big names.
Very cool.
I mean, we're big names too. So nice. Do you ever expect Les and Susan to show back up at the ranch and partake, or are they pretty much completely cashed out at this point?
The only two times they've come back were for the two pickup parties.
Okay,
They did show up on time for the pickup parties.
that's good.
They spent most of the time going through the house for any books or clothing they'd left behind, and then they left early. So yeah, they've moved on. But yeah, every time someone around here breaks a water line and I have to fix one, I have questions for them. So I'd love it if they came and visited, but they're very happy with their lives in PG.
Good. If you need a good party planner, event planner, I have one on speed dial. So
Okay,
yeah.
very cool,
Just so
fantastic.
you know, I know Jen does a good job with all that kind of stuff, but if you want to outsource it to somebody,
Cool. Yeah, no, I need all kinds of help for sure.
yeah, you're pretty much a one-man band at this point, thanks
Yeah,
to your, neglectful mother and wanton stepmother. So,
seriously, the parental abuse
oh
is
God, you're
yeah,
basically Tiny Tim at this point.
it's sad.
Cool. So before we get too far into Aaron's psyche and some of the psychological issues that he's dealing with, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask him some questions, we are open. The phone lines are open. Matt is asking you a question, but he's muted, so you can't hear him, which is
Mm.
crazy. Yeah, we're
Is it
calling you
about
out.
food?
Point that fork at me. Point the fork even more.
I'm not asking a question.
Oh,
Just
oh,
point the fork at you.
That's
oh.
fine.
I think we
Fork.
should do this at my house, and I'll just do it for everybody on the next one.
I
Stacey,
I'm it.
I know.
Yeah. Stacy, Matt, and Rigo are in. I mean, I'm always in. We can make this happen. So
That would be great. I'm literally eating honey stinger caffeinated chews while I'm drinking wine here. So I think there's some room for improvement.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds
Uh,
toxic.
yeah, oh,
Nice.
keeps you moving.
Apparently the lights went out at David and Morgan's house, which is very sad. So hopefully
The power but no sunshine.
oh, okay. All right.
And we're eating this with Chinese food, which goes really well with that very first white. So we cycled back to the very first white we started to finish up dinner with.
I can see
Excellent.
that. Yeah,
Goes
the
amazing
like
with
a like a
Chinese.
like a mushu pork or something would go really well with
Yeah,
that. I
we're
can
eating
see
orange
that.
chicken right now.
Ooh, that
Oh,
would
Mm,
go well.
nice.
right
It's
on.
kind of like that barbecue flavor that you had.
Oh. You want to
There
say
you go.
something?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Esther.
Hi. Thank you, Matt, for inviting me.
It's her first time. We invited her over. She
Yes.
lives down the street.
Cheers.
We love virgins around here. So welcome.
Yay.
The other
Enjoyed
virgin boy
it
you're
so
just-
very much. Enjoyed the wines. Learned a lot. Thank you for having me.
She has a
Absolutely.
meeting at 9 a.m. We're not sure if she's going to make it.
Hopefully she doesn't have to give her chip in at that point. Oh, different kind of meeting. Got
Okay.
it. Sorry. Pam, what were you guys cooking tonight? Because you guys usually cook when you not to put you on the spot. You're muted. Still muted, Pam. Sorry. We can't. You're still muted, Pam. We can't hear you. Nope. Still muted. It's hard.
You can't.
I
Can
know.
you unmute for her? Or-
Maybe I can. Let me see. Good question. I can ask to unmute, but I can't unmute. She's got to do it herself. We believe in you, Pam. You can do it. You can unmute. It's the one that looks like a little microphone and has a red line across it. Just tap it. And if the red line's gone, then you're free.
Bottom left.
Sandy, how are you feeling? Are you recovering nicely? And I know you're going to need to unmute yourself too. There we go.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
Where?
not feeling better?
I'm looking. Where are we?
Yeah, screen.
You're in
we are here.
You're in
I'm
Riverside.
sorry, Larry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're on Earth.
Okay, I'm sorry. Larry doesn't know how to operate my Mac, and we've been having some problems tonight.
Quite a euphemism.
But I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't miss any more than we have to of these. So this
No,
was
I know.
a big comeback.
Excellent. Good. Beautiful. Well, if folks want to buy online from you, Aaron, what's the best place to visit you?
Shadowrunvineyards.com.
Okay.
All the current vintages are there. And I would encourage people to, before they make a purchase, email me with, with questions about which vintage they might be interested in, or to find out, like I said, I've got other vintages that aren't listed on the website, and I enjoy talking about those and selling them as well.
Yeah, a lot of library wines still available if you're interested. Like Stacy was talking about earlier, doing some verticals, pulling some verticals of their wines. Those are available. It's always fun to explore some of the older stuff there. It's amazing. I mean, it's so nice to have a true family-run winery that's been around for 20 plus years at this point. I mean, there are family-run wineries in Paso, but when you get into like Eberly is a family-run winery or J. Laura is a family-run winery, like yes, but it's a big corporate thing. Like you guys are truly family, like small run, less
Really
than
are.
1,000 cases a year, just really small batch, and kind of what Paso to me is all about, which I appreciate, and I think we need more of that going on here. So that's great.
Well, I always have fun in the tasting room, and people seem to have fun when they're in there. There aren't. I usually don't, unless it's spring and it's a super bloom. I don't have 20 people in the tasting room. I get to hang out with the people that come in, and people that drive out to Creston tend to be, more seasoned wine drinkers and really interesting. And so anyway,
or your literal neighbors,
or my literal, we're like, what do they call us? Is it the store? I don't know. People come by to pick up wine on their way home from work.
You're the canteen. You're the commissary.
We're kind of like Cheers, right?
We
We have some regulars. But anyway, yeah, come pay us a visit.
Yeah. You get to meet your dog Flynn, and you just adopted a new dog named Frankie.
Yeah, Flynn's been 86 from the tasting room
Mm.
for continuing to jump on people, but the new dog he's a good tasting room dog. So
Flynn is a Rhodesian Ridgeback, so yeah.
he really likes people, and he really likes to jump on them. So
I've seen him literally destroy your wine bar, your tables at one point.
yeah, he's just very excited.
Yeah. But yeah, fun place to go. Again, if you want that true, authentic, like I am literally meeting with the winemaker, the person who, had their hands on these grapes and oversaw everything. You can't do better than Shadow Run. I mean, it's truly the tasting room where you're going to get to meet Aaron, or if for some reason Aaron's not there, it's Jen who's helping make the wine, or it's Les or Susan. It's truly family run there, which is great.
And it's better to drink wine made by people you know.
It's true.
That's
true.
mine.
Absolutely.
Better to drink wine than what?
By people
Yes.
you know.
Ah.
There you go. All right. Well, at this point, I think it's a good place to wrap things up. Keep an eye out for our next email. We have another revisit that we are doing next month. We're going to be featuring the wines from the Lazar Wine Company, my good friend Adam Lazar, who has been not only making wine here in Paso Robles, but is one of the foremost, like, sort of large wine brand winemakers. He made wine for Han, for Broadside, for Cycles Gladiator. Back in the day, some of my favorite wines. Truly a rock star of winemaking. Is still making his wine through his Lazar label. Some really fun, interesting, single varietal, small batch stuff. He's slowly phasing out of it, so this may be the last time you can ever get the Lazar wine. So we're kind of catching him at a really interesting time. But super looking forward to that one. So the email should be going out. If not next week, then the week after. Keep an eye out for that. And thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Take
Chris.
care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Yeah.
Nice seeing
Thank
you.
you so much. The Malbec was amazing. It was so
Awesome.
good and so
Awesome.
unique and like very different. That's why I was asking about the vertical difference of like the Malbec between, like you said, like the 20, the 21, the 22.
I won't even attempt to
Yeah,
figure out
it's
how
really interesting. It's
Thank you.
delicious. Yeah. All your wines are fantastic, but the Malbec just was very,
When you go.
very unique.
Thank you. If you want to try the 21, I'll get a bottle to you.
Oh yeah. Well, definitely we're gonna, yeah. And Matt and Rigo, I don't know if they were up in your
Oh, yeah.
came to your tasting room, and I know spent a good time with you guys and your dad, and
Hey, guys.
so yeah, it's fun. So yeah, definitely would love to try. And it was interesting. You said you thought the 21 was going to age better because you thought that like that has more tannins, and so like you kind of softened it. It's like more fruit on the 22, or
Yeah, the 21 has more higher acid,
yeah.
more tannins, which means it's a little rougher around the edges, or it needs to breathe more, or you need a piece of meat or cheese in your mouth, or you like wait for 3 years. Whereas the 22, I've tried both on really fancy wine people thinking they would like the 21 better, but invariably they like the 22 because it's softer and more available. But I think that 21, if I can hold on to it long enough, it's gonna be a killer. So
How long do you think you would like? What point, would you start drinking? I mean, obviously drink it now, but like, where would you buy a couple bottles and then try it here, and here?
yeah, it depends on how the wine is stored. But I would say if like a 21, I don't know, if you kept it in your kitchen for 2 or 3 years, that's probably the peak. If you kept it at 58 degrees, 24 hours a day, maybe 7 or 8 years might be the peak, something like that. So.
Okay. What's of your oldest Malbecs? Like, have you kept? Is that
The 2020? That was the first year I started hanging on to stuff because my folks weren't precious about it. They just sell till it was gone, and so did I. And then I decided I thought it'd be cool to walk into the barrel room and be like, all right, what are we having for dinner? What might be interesting? I haven't tried one of these in a year or something. So I'm trying to build that out and also offer it to our customers.
Yeah.
Stacy's going.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I was going to say, Stacy's going to literally buy up every last bottle of 2020 Malbec you have.
I love it.
Like, Yeah.
because it's like 7 bottles. So it's just going to be like,
Yeah,
I will take those 7. And the 3
I will
cases
take
of
them all.
21, those are mine
Yeah.
as well.
You know
Like,
what? It might be
like-
listed on our website as a library wine, and I would love to mark it as sold out. You should have moved quicker. So yeah, they're all yours.
Kind of wondering, like that scene from Swingers. Like, do I email tonight or do I have to wait till tomorrow to email
Right,
you? Like,
right.
how soon?
Hey, Nikki,
Oh,
it's
hey.
Mike.
Yeah.
Just want to say I had a great time
yeah.
tonight. And
Yeah. Right.
so the answer, Stacy, is 7 days.
7 days. Got
7
it.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great. Really appreciate your time
Awesome.
again.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you
All
guys
right,
for
thanks,
hanging out
everybody.
this long.
Have a good night. Take care. We'll see you
night.
next month for Lazar Wines.